the terrifying umibozu, a giant sea creature that sinks ships with a deadly barrel of water, to the bizarre Lusca, half shark, half octopus hybrid lurking in Caribbean waters, and Stellar's sea ape, an ape-like creature with the body of a seal spotted in the Bering Sea centuries ago. These are deep-sea creatures from a parallel universe. Japanese sailors had plenty to worry about when they set out to sea: storms, shipwrecks, the pure vastness of the unknown, but nothing unsettled them quite like the umibozu, said to be this massive, shadowy entity that would rise up from the ocean on calm nights, a towering black shape with no real features other than its glowing white eyes. Not the type of tentacled or serpentine sea creature you usually picture, and it didn't act like one either. It wouldn't attack right away. Instead, it would demand a barrel from the crew, and if they gave it one, it would use it to then scoop water into their ship until they sank. If they refused, well, things didn't end much better. It's kind of a lose-lose situation. No one really knows where the legend comes from originally, but some say that umibozu is the ghost of a drowned monk, cursed to haunt the sea forever. Others think it's more of a warning, a way to explain how fast things can turn deadly out in the open water. In some versions, it only shows up when someone on board has angered the gods, meaning if you saw one, your fate was already sealed. The Lusca is a creature that haunts the waters off the Caribbean. Once again, this thing probably doesn't look like anything you're imagining. It's said to be half shark, half octopus. Some even describe it having 3 shark's heads, so a pretty bizarre looking monster and equally as terrifying. It lurks in the dark depths of underwater caves, ready to drag unsuspecting swimmers or boats down into the water. Local fishermen and sailors who spent too much time on the water often share these chilling stories about close encounters with it. Many sightings of the Lusca have been reported near the blue holes of Andros Island in the Bahamas. One of the most famous incidents happened on January 18th of 2011, when what appeared to be the body of this giant octopus washed up on Grand Bahama Island. Witnesses said that the remains looked like just a part of the creature's head and mouth, and the rest of the body missing. Based on what they saw though, local fishermen who were familiar with octopus anatomy estimated that this creature, if intact, would have measured between 20 and 30 feet long when alive. The description of this next creature is pretty strange, but it actually has roots in real-life reports. It's called Stellar's sea ape. It was first described by Georg Wilhelm Steller, a German naturalist who came across it during an expedition to the Bering Sea in the 18th century. According to Steller, the creature was seen in the waters near the Commander Islands, a remote part of Russia. What makes it so strange? Well, it was described as this mix between a primate and a seal, an ape-like creature with the body of a seal, complete with dark fur, a wide mouth, and a flat nose. Some reports say it had a tail like a seal's, but with the arms of a monkey even. I told you this one was gonna be strange. The sea ape was said to have been spotted in the wild swimming and occasionally popping its head out of the water. There's a theory that it could have been a type of extinct or undiscovered sea mammal, a creature that went extinct before scientists could get a proper chance to identify it. Trunco is another weird one. It's the nickname given to an animal reportedly seen off the coast of Margate, South Africa, on October 25th, 1924. The creature was first noticed battling 2 killer whales, which allegedly fought with it for about 3 hours. Witnesses claim the strange creature used its tail to fend off the whales and even managed to lift itself out of the water by 20 feet at one point. After the battle, the creature's carcass washed ashore on Margate Beach, where it remained for 10 days. The animal was said to be around 47 feet long, 10 feet wide, and 5 feet high. It had a trunk about 5 feet long and 14 inches in diameter, and a tail that measured about 10 feet. One of the most unusual features was its snowy white fur, which was about 8 inches long. Interestingly, the trunk was also attached directly to the torso with no head visible. This led British cryptozoologist Carl Schuker to dub the creature Trunco in his 1996 book, The Unexplained. Ogopogo is the mysterious creature said to live in Lake Okanagan, British Columbia. Described as a serpent-like monster with a long, undulating body, the creature has been part of of local folklore for centuries. Indigenous tribes around the lake have long spoken of a water monster said to control the waters, creating waves and whirlpools to drag people under. The first European sighting was recorded in 1872, but the legend really gained traction in the 1920s. Since then, there have been numerous reports with witnesses claiming to see this large creature with humps rising out of the water, sometimes with this horse-like head and reptilian features. Some skeptics argue that Ogopogo is just a misidentified sturgeon or a floating log, but the fact is, sightings just continue to this day. Could it be some prehistoric survivor, a remnant of creatures like the plesiosaur or a giant eel?
When it was first discovered, scientists gave it a name straight out of a horror movie: vampire squid. The vampire squid from hell. This eerie cephalopod lives in oxygen-depleted depths of over 3,000 feet down. Despite its name, it doesn't suck blood. It uses bioluminescent displays and cape-like webbing to scare off predators. Its glowing blue eyes, cloak-like arms, and ability to turn itself inside out make it look like a creature from another world. For years, early specimens were thought to be hoaxes because of how unusual their anatomy was, until deep-sea submersibles finally filmed them alive in action. A glowing shark sounds like something out of a comic book, but in 2020, scientists discovered that it's actually real. While conducting a survey off the coast of New Zealand, researchers captured footage of a kite-fin shark, a species known to dwell in the twilight zone of the ocean around 1,000 feet below the surface. What stunned them was that this shark emitted a visible blue-green glow even in complete darkness. At nearly 6 feet long, it instantly earned the title of the largest known bioluminescent vertebrate on the planet. This eerie glow isn't just for show. The shark's skin contains special light-producing organs called photophores, which may help it camouflage itself from predators by blending in with the faint light filtering down from above. Essentially, it's just hiding in plain sight. When photos and videos first surfaced, many people dismissed them as a clever camera trick or digital edit. After all, sharks really aren't supposed to glow. But further research revealed that this wasn't a one-off. We now know several deep-sea sharks, including the lantern shark and southern lantern shark, also have this haunting glow. And scientists still aren't sure how many other glowing giants are lurking in the deep, waiting to be seen. A fish that walks on its hands. Sounds like a bad sci-fi movie, but in this case it's actually real, and it's called the pink handfish. Native to the coastal waters near Tasmania, the pink handfish doesn't behave like most fish. Instead of swimming through water columns, it strolls across the seafloor using its pectoral fins, which have evolved into something that look remarkably like stubby little hands. It doesn't glide, it waddles, like a cartoon character with somewhere important to be. First officially described in the 1990s, the pink handfish remained incredibly elusive. It wasn't seen again in the wild until 2021, when divers captured rare footage of one walking near a reef in deeper water than previously expected. When that footage was published, people questioned whether it was CGI. The fish's movement was so odd, so unlike anything in popular marine biology, that it sparked viral interest and disbelief. Scientists believe that the handfish's walking behavior is a result of adaptation to a sedentary, reef-bound life. Unfortunately, this uniqueness is part of the problem. Their habitat is small, their population is low, and environmental changes could push them to extinction. As strange and comical as they seem, pink handfish are now critically endangered, and conservation efforts are racing to keep them from disappearing completely. In 2007, an ocean expedition stumbled upon a creature that looked more like a floating ribbon than anything living, and no one could figure out what it was. While exploring the unexplored depths of the Celebes Sea, a team of scientists using a deep-sea submersible noticed something strange moving in the water column. It was a long, thin, translucent, and brightly colored in shades of pink and yellow. It undulated like a flag caught in a current, but it didn't seem to have a head, eyes, or even recognizable limbs. The scientists were stunned. It didn't resemble any fish, eel, or jellyfish that they knew, and for days, footage of the encounter made its way through marine biology circles, with some experts initially wondering if it was a prank or a visual glitch caused by the ROV's lights. But further analysis revealed something even weirder. It was likely a siphonophore, an organism made up of many smaller organisms working together as a single being. Siphonophores are related to jellyfish and corals, but they don't play by the usual biological rules. Each unit specializes in a task: feeding, movement, reproduction, and together they act as one animal. The ribboned creature is believed to be an especially rare and possibly undescribed species, and its delicate, surreal appearance still puzzles scientists. It was one of those moments in science where reality looks more like fantasy and reminds us how little we really know about the ocean.
Number 10. Giant oarfish. An oarfish really looks like a fish-snake hybrid, as it's a huge, greatly elonged fish. The giant oarfish is the longest bony fish alive, growing up to 36 feet in length. It is found in areas spanning from temperate ocean zones to tropical ones. But unfortunately, we know little about the oarfish because it lives deep underwater and it's rarely seen. However, we know it neither feeds on humans nor fishes, but on small marine creatures like crustaceans and krill. It was officially discovered in 1772, and in September 1996, the United States Navy SEALs found a giant oarfish that washed up on the shore near San Diego, California, and it was 23 feet long. The giant oarfish is by far the largest member of its fish family, at a published total length of 26 feet, with unconfirmed reports of 36 feet and 56 feet specimens and 600 pounds in weight. Now, even though those aren't confirmed, the 20-foot long one still scares me immensely. Number 9. Giant squid. So the kraken is a legendary sea monster of enormous size and is said to appear off the coast of Norway, but what if I told you it was real? A giant squid was found on a shore in Denmark in 1853. The giant squid is as elusive as the legend it inspired, as it lives so deep underwater that we have limited information about it. However, we know it has the largest eyes of all living creatures, grows up to 60 feet, and is frequently hunted by sperm whales for food. The weaker giant squid generally flees when confronted by a whale. However, it sometimes fights back when cornered, and it's not unusual to find sperm whales with scars left from their battles with giant squids. It wasn't until the turn of the century in 2001 that humans saw the giant squid for the first time, and only a few years after that it was finally photographed, making it one of the most elusive on the planet. The giant squid has long been known to exist, but capturing it on film has taken scientists extensive time and voyages to the deepest parts of the ocean where life is difficult to sustain. Number 8. Ribbon worm. Most ribbon worms are very slim, usually only a few millimeters wide, although a few have relatively short but wide bodies. Many have a pattern of yellow, orange, red, and green coloration, and they move slowly using their external cilia to glide on surfaces on a trail of slime, while larger species use muscular waves to crawl. Most of these worms burrow in sediments, lurk in crevices between shells, stones, or the holdfasts of algae or sessile animals. Others build semi-permanent burrows lined with mucus or produce cellophane-like tubes. Mainly in the tropics and subtropics, about 12 species appear in freshwater, and about a dozen species live on the land in cool, damp places, for example under rotting logs. Now these just sound disgusting to me, and I never want to get close to one. Number 7. Hagfish. With a name like that, I think you can expect this thing to be quite ugly. And it is. It actually makes me incredibly uncomfortable. I mean, just look at it. Ew, like how is that even real? Now, hagfish are eel-shaped, slime-producing marine fish, and they are the only known living animals that have a skull but no vertebral column, although hagfish do have rudimentary vertebrae. Hagfish are jawless, and living hagfish remain similar to hagfish from around 30 million years ago. There are estimated to be 76 species of hagfish, and some live as deep as 5,500 feet below the water's surface. They're also known as slime eels because of the goop their bodies produce to ward off predators. These animals can grow to be between 16 and 40 inches long, and some live as deep as 5,600 feet below the water's surface, and as long as they stay away from me though, that's all that matters. Number 6. Barrel eye. The barrel eye, also known as a spookfish, has extremely light-sensitive eyes on top of its fluid-filled head. The barrel eye was first described in 1939, but remained a mystery to scientists until 2009, when they discovered that its large tubular eyes could actually rotate inside its head. This rotational ability allows them to look upward for potential prey or face forward to see what it is eating. Since barrel eyes live at such depths where there is hardly any light, their tubular eyes help them see whatever faint amounts of light drift down to them. They also have two spots above their mouths which are called nars, similar to human nostrils. Now I understand why they're called spookfish though, because they do look extremely spooky.
In our number 5 spot we have gods and goddesses. Gods and goddesses have been worshipped and believed in since, well, the dawn of time. No, they are not mythical creatures, but they are mythical and needed to be on this list. Do you ever think about where the heck the stories about gods and goddesses perhaps came from? Did one person make them up and then others expanded on them? Perhaps. But what if none of them were made up? What if the story of Thor was channeled and it is really a story that took place in another parallel universe? It's definitely possible. There have been a few strange sightings of gods and goddesses over the years. There is one sighting of an eye in the clouds that people wondered if it was the eye of God. It's pretty wild to see, and I wonder what you think. Is this a pure coincidence that the clouds look like an eye, or perhaps is that the eye of God watching us, or a god watching us? In our number 4 spot we have dragons. Dragons are mythical creatures that fly, have long tails, and breathe fire. They have long been cherished by the people of China, who on many occasions have said that they feel the spirit of them or have spotted them. There is a video that was once floating around the internet that would make you think that perhaps they are real. This video isn't confirmed to be real though, but if it is, aw, that's the cutest baby dragon ever. The second video, however, is for sure real, and it is honestly a bit frightening to see. Some think that's a dragon, and some think it's a god or Jesus. But honestly, it could very well be an alien too. Personally, I think dragons most likely exist as a whole in another universe, but it's possible that we may have one or two in our universe as well. Who knows? In our number 3 spot we have the Loveland frog. Before this video, I had never heard of this mythical creature. This creature is essentially a giant humanoid that has qualities of a frog. Much to my surprise, there have been some sightings of this creature that definitely make you think, huh, perhaps it is real. Not enough up close and personal sightings though. But perhaps this is another creature that is from another universe. Watch, there is another universe out there where all of these creatures live and no humans exist. Then we would be their mythical creatures. Here is some footage someone found of what looks to be a Loveland frog. It certainly looks like one to me. I would love to know your thoughts. In our number 2 spot we have the Yeti. The Yeti is an ape-like being entity that people have spoken about as a mythical creature from Asia. No scientist has ever been able to get face to face with a Yeti, and so therefore it hasn't been officially classified as real. But just because we haven't gotten up close and personal with something doesn't mean that it is not real. Perhaps the Yeti has been hiding from humans. Perhaps the Yeti doesn't trust humans. Perhaps the Yeti is just from another universe. Well, not too long ago there were sightings of the Yeti, and here is a photo that someone captured of it running away. I feel like that is solid proof of the Yeti existing. Whether it is what we think it is, a creature more like a human but very tall, hairy, and not as evolved, that is the question. Perhaps it is not what we think it is at all. Perhaps it has magical powers and that is how it has stayed disguised all of this time. Or perhaps he goes back into his own dimension from time to time. Who knows? In our number 1 spot we have fairies. If there is one mythical creature that I am personally obsessed with and would be very, very happy if it existed, it would be the fairy. All of my life I have been obsessed with the idea of them. In fact, all of my life people would say to me that I am very fairy-like. Of course they meant that my spirit reminds them of how movies have portrayed fairies, and so that's their understanding of what fairies are. Personally, I think it is very possible that fairies live among us, and most likely in Ireland. Did you know that it was once thought that the people of Atlantis came to Ireland as their continent was sinking, and so therefore some Irish people would be magical like the Atlanteans, and some believe that our idea of fairies are perhaps just these people that are from Atlantis. Very interesting thought. Perhaps they live in another dimension though, and that's why we can't see them. Or maybe they all went to a parallel universe. Honestly, we could wonder about this forever, and it is fun, but I suppose unless we develop a device that allows us to slip into other dimensions, then we will never really know. But it's sure fun to imagine.
At a first glance, it looked like a sad-faced cartoon drawn by a child, but the blobfish is very real, and it's even stranger than it looks. In 2003, the blobfish was hauled up from the deep waters off the coast of Australia. Out of water, it looks like a pink, droopy-faced jelly creature, earning it the title of world's ugliest animal. But here's the twist. The blobfish isn't really ugly. It's a victim of pressure. At depths of over 2,000 feet, the blobfish's gelatinous body helps it float just above the sea floor without expending energy. But when it's pulled to the surface, the lack of pressure turns it into the sad, saggy creature we've all seen online. Scientists at first thought it was a deformed fish or a hoax, but it's now one of the most infamous deep-sea dwellers on record. In 2016, a strange glowing orb was spotted clinging to a rock off the coast of California, and no one knew what it was. During an NOAA expedition, scientists using a deep-sea ROV encountered a small, shimmering sphere about the size of a tennis ball. It looked like a glowing alien egg and was completely unlike anything they'd cataloged before. At first, researchers joked that it might be a Pokemon or an alien embryo, but it turns out it was a newly discovered species of nudibranch, a type of soft-bodied sea slug. What made it so confusing was its smooth, symmetrical appearance, unlike most nudibranches, which are usually flamboyant and frilly. It's still unnamed officially, but it's been preserved and studied ever since. Imagine pulling up a fish and realizing you can see its brain. Literally. That's what happened with the barrel eye fish. First described in 1939 but never observed alive until 2009, these guys are a deep sea fish with a transparent, dome-shaped head. Inside, two barrel-shaped eyes float around, glowing green and pointing upward through its clear skull to detect prey above. When scientists first recovered one, they assumed it was either damaged or altered in some way because no one expected to find a creature with a built-in glass dome for a head. The first live video of one swimming stunned researchers and quickly went viral. Could you imagine being the scientist who discovered that, but like not having the technology that we have now to capture it on video and just having to go describe that to a friend? Just picture that. When a 20-foot carcass washed up on a beach in Russia in 2020, covered in hair-like fibers, people weren't sure if it was a whale or something prehistoric. Dubbed the Russian sea monster, the rotting mass was found near the Bering Sea, and initial photos showed a pale, hairy beast with no clear features. Some even thought it was a frozen yeti that drifted from the Arctic. Turns out it was most likely a decayed whale, possibly a beluga, whose tissues had decomposed in such a way that fibrous cartilage mimicked hair. But scientists on the scene admitted they had, quote, never seen anything like it before, and it wasn't until samples were sent for lab testing that they could confirm it wasn't something out of a cryptid tale. You open a fish's mouth and see perfect rows of square, human-like teeth. That's the nightmare of anyone who catches a sheep's head. Found along the Atlantic coast of North America, the sheep's head fish has a row of teeth that closely resemble human molars used to crush barnacles, clams, and crabs. When photos first surfaced online, many believed they were fake or photoshopped for laughs, but nope. These fish are real, common, and caught regularly by fishermen. Their creepy smiles are the result of natural evolution designed for shell-crushing efficiency. In 2017, scientists exploring off the coast of Australia reeled up something that looked like a fat, eyeless worm with no face. Nicknamed the faceless fish for obvious reasons, this creature is actually a cusk eel, a family of deep-sea fish adapted to life at extreme depths. I really feel the need to pronounce every single letter of the word cusk in cusk eel. Because their facial features are compressed and mostly internal, they look like a blob with no eyes or mouth. When scientists showed the catch to colleagues, many assumed it was a hoax or mislabeled because it looked nothing like the eel family it belonged to. But it is real, and one of the many examples of how the deep sea rewrites the rules of evolution.
Big fin squid are insanely rare. So rare that most deep sea explorers will just go their whole careers without seeing one. Big fin squid were first caught on camera in September of 1988 off northern Brazil, nearly 4,735 meters down, which is over 15,000 feet. They've got these crazy long skinny arms and big fins that give them this totally alien look. They really do look like something from another planet, and yes, those are arms, not tentacles. Big fins have 4 normal arms and 2 specialized feeding tentacles, but arms stretch so ridiculously long, sometimes as long as their whole body, it's easy to mistake them for tentacles. In 1992, a submersible spotted 2 off the coast of West Africa, and in 2000, an ROV in the Gulf of Mexico filmed one estimated at 7 meters long. More recently, an NOAA submersible captured a big fin in November of 2021 off Florida at nearly 2,400 meters deep. Some of them probably live over 6,000 meters down, which is basically the bottom of the sea. Scientists still don't fully understand how they live down there, but each rare sighting gives them an incredible peek at one of the strangest, most mysterious creatures in the ocean. The smooth-toothed black-tipped shark was thought to be extinct over 100 years ago, until it was rediscovered in 2008 at a fish market in Kuwait. The first specimen was caught back in 1902 by a naturalist Wilhelm Hein in Yemen and sent to the Vienna Museum along with other animals and plants, and for decades this thing went mostly unnoticed. Then in 1985, scientist Jack Garrick examined that old specimen and he identified it as a new species. Since no other specimens had been seen, scientists assumed it might be extinct, and some even questioned whether it was a valid species at all. But then in 2008, during a research expedition, the smooth-toothed blacktip appeared at Kuwait's sharkfish market. These sharks are relatively small, growing up to 4 feet long with a greenish-colored body. They seem to prefer shallow waters and feed mainly on small, bony fish. Not much else is known about them, but the smooth-toothed blacktip is currently listed as vulnerable on the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Red List of threatened species. The Shoshone pupfish is a tiny fish that lives in the middle of the desert, in small springs and drainage areas around Shoshone Springs, California. Scientists thought it had gone extinct by 1969, but in 1986, it was rediscovered hiding in a drainage ditch that had been covered in thick cattails. The population was so small at the time that almost all the fish were collected and sent to universities for breeding programs, just to make sure the species didn't disappear completely. These fish are built to survive extreme conditions. They can handle water temperatures from freezing all the way up to 44 degrees Celsius or 111 degrees Fahrenheit. They grow up fast as well, reaching sexual maturity in just 4 to 6 weeks. The coelacanth is a fish that scientists thought had been gone for 66 million years, basically since the time of the dinosaurs. But then in 1938, a fisherman off South Africa hauled one up and brought it to Marjorie Courtney Latimer, a museum curator. She didn't totally know what she had at first, but after calling in scientist J.L.B. Smith, it was confirmed that this fish, known only from fossils, was actually still a living species, a species that became known as the quintessential living fossil. Coelacanths live in the deep sea, usually between 150 and 700 meters down, or about 490 and 2,300 feet. They've got these weird lobed fins and a tail unlike anything you'd normally see on a fish, which is why scientists think they're kind of like this bridge, a missing link between fish and the first land animals. That's how long these things have been around. Since that first discovery, another species, known as the Indonesian coelacanth, was spotted off Indonesia in 1997. The vaquita is a tiny porpoise living in the northern part of Mexico's Gulf of California. It's basically the rarest marine mammal on Earth. As of 2025, there are fewer than 10 left. They're small, only about 5 feet long. They have dark rings around their eyes. They stick to shallow, murky waters, so that makes spotting them harder. The biggest danger for these things isn't natural predators. It's us. Fishermen set nets to catch another endangered fish called the totaba, and vaquitas get accidentally trapped in them. These other fish they're trying to catch are highly prized, especially its swim bladders, so these nets keep being used even though they're deadly for these porpoises. Conservation teams are patrolling their habitats quite often. They remove nets, they use underwater microphones to try and track them, but just aren't enough resources to fully protect them. This first creature on the list is the Protolophila. Not exactly a household name, but that's probably because this thing was believed to have gone extinct not 100 years ago, not a couple thousand even. Scientists thought it went extinct about 4 million years ago. This tiny sea creature related to corals and sea anemones usually only shows up as little holes on the tubes of marine worms. Until recently, it was only known from fossils found in Europe and the Middle East, but when scientists in New Zealand dug up fossils of this thing that were supposedly from a time after the species had already disappeared, it got them curious enough to go back and check some tube worm samples they'd collected back in 2008, and it turns out Protolophila had been alive and well in New Zealand waters the whole time. They just hadn't noticed. As National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research scientist Dennis Gordon put it, it's one of those rare cases where studying fossils actually led to finding a species still alive today. Amura's whale is a ghost of the ocean, so rare that until 2015 scientists had never seen one alive. They were first confirmed as a separate species in 2003, based on DNA and physical differences from Bride's whales. But even then, they were known only from dead specimens. That all changed in October of 2015 though, when an international team of biologists filmed Amura's whales off the coast of Madagascar. They spotted 44 individuals and collected some samples, making it the first time this whale had ever been documented alive in the wild. Amura's whales are pretty small by whale standards, only about 32 to 39 feet long or 10 to 12 meters, and people often mistake them for Bride's whales. One of the coolest things about them is their asymmetrical lower jaw. White on the right side, dark on the left. Their fins are unique as well, which make them easier to tell apart if you're lucky enough to see one. Since that first footage, Amura's whales have popped up a handful of times, but sightings are still rare, and scientists still have a lot to learn about them. For almost 50 years, nobody had seen the Pastrum cyathiform, a rare stalked jellyfish that was last spotted in France back in 1976. Most experts figured it had gone extinct. But then Neil Roberts, just a tourist on an island off the coast of Scotland, flipped over a rock and found 4 of them. Roberts took some photos, but when he looked online, he noticed what he'd just photographed didn't really match any other photos. The only thing that looked close were old drawings. Turns out Neil had just taken the first ever photo of the species. Guy Freeman, editor of British Wildlife magazine, was amazed. When Neil first shared the photos, it was like seeing a ghost, Freeman said. Continuing, this thing had only ever existed in old drawings. It was suddenly there in the flesh. This image was shared to X by the National Parks Board, who wrote, "The Neptune's cup sponge is the first animal described from Singapore. It was collected in Rafflesia's presence in 1819 and described by Thomas Hardwick, presumed to be extinct until its reappearance in the region. It was rediscovered here in 2011. So a bit more on this. Neptune's cup is a sea creature people thought was gone for good. By 1912 it was considered extinct because it had been overharvested. Then in 2011, divers off Thailand and Singapore found a handful of these things alive. Singapore moved some to a marine sanctuary to protect them, but the same sanctuary is full of fish like map puffers and copperband butterfly fish that love snacking on them. Not exactly ideal, but since 2017, more have been spotted off Cambodia. Unlike most sponges that attach to reefs, these guys just anchor themselves in the sand at the bottom of the ocean. Turns out they weren't extinct, they were just really good at hiding. 2 fishermen off Gran Canaria got the surprise of their lives. They came face to face with one of the ocean's weirdest predators, a goblin shark. Now the thing is, these sharks are found way deep below the surface, but this one turned up while Marcos Hernandez and Ramon Santana were fishing. When it came up, we had no idea what it was, Marcos said. At first we thought it was a swordfish because of the snout, but then we realized it wasn't. It had leathery skin, and after looking online, we understood what it really was." End quote. The shark even showed off its signature party trick, where its jaw juts out. After confirming it was a goblin shark, they released it back into the water. This is the first confirmed sighting of the species in these waters. Goblin sharks are often called living fossils because they've barely changed in over 100 million years. They're rarely seen alive, let alone at these depths. In 2021, a biotech company called Oxitec released genetically modified mosquitoes in the Florida Keys. The goal was to reduce the population of Aedes aegypti mosquitoes, which spread diseases like dengue and Zika. These lab-engineered male mosquitoes were designed to mate with wild females, passing on a gene that would prevent their offspring from surviving to adulthood. The idea was that over time the mosquito population would decline, but the plan didn't go exactly as planned. Some scientists were worried that the gene might not be as lethal as expected and that some offspring would survive and potentially create a hybrid population. And how would the reduction of one mosquito species affect predators or allow potentially more dangerous mosquito species to overpopulate? Even with these concerns though, the project moved forward and millions of genetically modified mosquitoes were released. It's only been a few years, so the long-term effects remain to be seen. In August of 1955, a woman named Naomi Johnson went swimming in the Ohio River near Evansville, Indiana, and came out with a story that's still being talked about today. She said something grabbed her from below, yanked her underwater, and tried to drag her down. She fought her way free and made it back to the surface, but her leg was covered in scratches and stained with this green slimy residue that wouldn't wash off for days. That alone would have made it a weird local mystery, but then it's just got stranger. Naomi later claimed a man in a military uniform came to her house, said he was with the US Air Force, and told her not to talk about what happened. No official report was filed and nobody could explain what she'd seen. Some people connect this to UFO sightings in the area around that time, saying it could have been part of a larger cover-up event. Others think that this was just a case of someone getting tangled up with a big fish or a log or seaweed. Still though, doesn't really explain the military visit part. Very weird story. From the late 1990s up until 2013, people in the Swiss village of Mal kept reporting a strange figure walking through the woods. They called it Le Loyon, or the Ghost of Mal. Witnesses described it as a tall person in a military-style cloak wearing a creepy old-school gas mask. They'd be completely silent, never speaking, just walking the same path over and over. No one knew who or what this was. Then in 2013, someone finally snapped a photo. A few weeks later, the sightings stopped. All that was found was a pile of the costume left in the woods, along with a note that basically said the person behind it was sick of being harassed and misunderstood. Some say it was just a harmless eccentric who didn't want to be bothered. Others think it was performance art or some type of social experiment, but there's another theory that something was going on in those woods. I mean, why walk around in a gas mask unless there's a very good reason? Was there some sort of experiment going on? It's really strange, because if it was just a hoax, I mean, just, some weirdo dressing up to scare people, you'd think they would have called it quits way sooner, but this lasted over a decade. There are some real accidents connected to the Popelik monster, but just what in the hell is the Popelik monster? It's a creature said to haunt a train trestle bridge in Louisville, Kentucky. People who've claimed to see it describe some kind of goat-man hybrid, has hooves, fur, horns, and the face of a man. The story goes that it lures people onto the tracks using hypnosis or by mimicking people, and then they get hit by an oncoming train. It sounds pretty out there, but people have actually died on that bridge. The train line is active, and because of the legend, people started going there to try and spot the beast for themselves. In 2016, a young woman was killed while investigating the site with her boyfriend. Another person died years earlier under similar circumstances, and some say the creature is just a spooky story to scare kids away from a dangerous area, but the origin of the legend is still murky. It goes back decades with no clear first report. So was it made up entirely? Or did someone really see something weird out there in the woods once and the story just grew from there? Whatever the truth is, the combination of actual deaths and the eerie setting has helped keep the Pope Lick monster legend alive. We've veered pretty far into the cryptozoology, urban legend realm, so let's talk about something a little more science-based and down to earth: synthetic biology in general. This is basically when scientists build or redesign living things from the ground up. Might tweak bacteria to make medicine or design microbes that eat plastic. It sounds helpful, and sometimes it is, but the problem is once you mess with life at that level, you can't always predict what's going to happen. There have been real concerns that some of these lab-made organisms could escape into the environment and do things they weren't intended to do, like spreading out of control, mutating, and wiping out other species. One example people talk about is modified yeast strains used to make biofuels, so tweaking the yeast genes so that it produces stuff like ethanol or other chemicals that can be used for fuel. Pretty cool. Even scientists working in this field admit that we're still figuring out the risks. Most of the time, things go as planned, but if just one of these creations gets out and starts doing something unexpected, things can spiral fast. In November of 2024, chaos broke out at the Alpha Genesis Research Facility in Yamasee, South Carolina, when 43 rhesus macaque monkeys escaped after a caretaker reportedly left a door unlocked. The monkeys ran off into nearby wooded areas. 35 were rounded up pretty quickly, but 8 of them were on the loose for weeks. These macaques are very intelligent animals, and this was concerning because they can carry diseases transmissible to humans. So folks were pretty concerned as days turned into weeks. But what exactly were these monkeys being used for? Well, the facility does research involving viruses, bioweapons. So yeah, this was starting to sound like the beginning of Planet of the Apes. Meanwhile, animal rights groups were all over this, calling out the lab for being sloppy and putting the public at risk. And of course, they were already pissed about monkeys being tested on in the first place. In the end, all the monkeys were safely recaptured, but this was definitely not a good look. In early 2025, Colossal Biosciences made headlines after announcing that they had successfully brought back the direwolf, or something like it. Using advanced gene editing, they took gray wolf DNA and basically tweaked it until it resembled the long extinct direwolf. Bigger build, stronger jaws, different fur. Not exactly a clone, but close enough that it was a pretty big deal. The company called it de-extinction. Some scientists called it more of a Frankenstein DNA project, but either way, the animals are real. They're alive, and they're not planning to keep them in a lab forever. Colossal said the goal is to reintroduce these wolves into the wild at some point to restore balance to certain ecosystems, but that raised a ton of red flags. First off, no one really knows how they're going to behave in the real world. What happens if it mates with modern wolves, throws off the predator-prey balance? There's also the question of what happens if these things turn aggressive. Colossal insists that they got it under control, but when you're resurrecting an ancient predator in a lab, some people feel pretty iffy about it. Not me though, I think this is awesome. Between 1966 and 1967, people in Point Pleasant, West Virginia kept reporting something strange. A tall creature with glowing red eyes. It was humanoid, but it also had giant wings. They called it the Mothman. Some said it chased their cars, others claimed it flew over buildings or hovered near the old TNT plant outside of town. Dozens of reports came in over the course of about a year. Then in December 1967, the Silver Bridge suddenly collapsed during rush hour, killing 46 people. And this is when the Mothman legend really exploded, because some claimed that they'd seen the creature perched on the bridge just before the disaster. One of the biggest rumors surrounding the mysterious Mothman creature is that it was the result of a messed up government experiment. But whether it was a misidentified bird or something else entirely, nobody ever got a solid explanation. In April of 1973, a man named Henry McDaniel from Enfield, Illinois, called the police in a panic, saying that some bizarre creature had tried to break into his house. He said it had 3 legs, short arms, and glowing red eyes. He fired at it, but said it just jumped away unfazed. A few days later, some local kids said that they saw something similar near an abandoned house, and pretty soon word spread and people from outside the town started showing up, hoping to spot it. Some thought it might have been an escaped kangaroo, others leaned into the weirder theories, like it being a government experiment that got loose, or something not of this world at all. Interestingly, the area was near a military base, so that definitely helped with the government experiment angle. angle. Government tried to downplay the whole thing, of course, but people who saw it stuck to their stories. Even the cops admitted that McDaniel didn't seem like someone making things up. To this day, nobody really knows what happened that spring. In the summer of 1988, a teenager in Lee County, South Carolina, claimed that this huge creature attacked his car near Scape Ore Swamp. He said it was about 7 feet tall, covered in green, scaly skin, and had glowing red eyes. His car was damaged, there were these deep scratches all over it, and his side mirror was busted. Not to mention that the kid was clearly shaken up. Police wondered if he was just making up the story to cover up an accident, but this was a pretty lame excuse to come up with. I mean, a lizard monster attacking your car? They didn't pay it much attention, but after that, more people started coming forward with similar stories. One woman said something ripped the chrome off her car. Another man claimed he saw the thing staring at him from the edge of the swamp. Locals started calling this creature the Lizard Man. Police started looking into it now as more reports just kept rolling in. One of the sillier explanations at the time was that people were actually seeing a bear, which is a pretty lazy explanation. Again, there's an escaped lab experiment theory for this one as well. As fast as it started though, the sightings stopped. It's since become a local legend. As for what people were really seeing though, who knows? I can safely say it probably wasn't a bear though. Back in the 1940s and 50s, the US dropped 43 nuclear bombs on Eniwak Atoll. Decades later, scientists noticed something pretty weird. Sea turtles had nuclear pollution in their shells. Turns out turtles pick up this radioactive material when they eat algae or swim through contaminated water. That radiation gets locked into layers of their shells. Scientists grabbed some turtle shells, even old museum samples, and found nuclear material buried in different layers. One sample collected in 1978 showed uranium in the shell 20 years after the tests had stopped. Off the coast of Greece, there was this story about a pale, mutated, misshapen dolphin. So this photo here was snapped by a man named Harvey Robertson, a Scottish tourist on a boat cruise. It does look pretty damn strange. I mean, if someone in a lab coat showed me this image and said it was a radioactive dolphin, I'd probably believe them. The image first surfaced on cryptid forums where fishermen and beachgoers came forward saying they'd seen it near the Ionian Sea areas, rumored to contain dumped cruise ship waste. Zoologist Dr. Darren Naish from the University of Southampton's National Oceanography Center thinks that if someone took a skin sample from this thing though, it would probably show a lot of polyvinyl chloride, basically plastic. So yeah, he doesn't really think this creature is real. But what do you think? After the 2011 meltdown at Fukushima, scientists and members of the Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO, have been testing fish in the plant's inner harbor, and they've come to some shocking results. Well, maybe not all that shocking considering what happened, but still interesting. In May 2022, they caught a black rockfish that was full of cesium-137, 180 times Japan's safe limit. Over a year-long period, they found 44 fish above the limit, caught inside or near the same port areas. These contaminated fish are almost all bottom dwellers that feed off the sediment where radioactive cesium has settled. The sediment was found to have over 100,000 becquerels per kilogram of radioactivity. To put that into perspective, Japan's safety limit for radioactive cesium in food is just 100 becquerels per kilogram. This stuff was literally 1,000 times over the safe limit, so way too dangerous for human exposure, obviously. TEPCO has installed nets to stop this radiated seafood from mixing with safer catch, but even then, a fish caught about 50 kilometers away in January of 2022 was still above the limit, so bottom line is, cleanup hasn't eliminated all radiation in the food chain. In the weeks leading up to the Chernobyl disaster in April of 1986, people in the area started reporting something strange. Sightings of a massive black bird-like creature near the power plant. Workers described it as huge, with a wingspan of over 20 feet, with glowing red eyes that pierced through the fog. Some said it would circle the plant. Some claimed it hovered over Pripyat itself, just watching. People who claimed to see the creature often reported being plagued by terrifying nightmares afterward, and there were stories about mysterious phone calls with no one on the other end, just heavy breathing. It would also come on around the same time people would report seeing the bird. Some believe the creature was a warning, an omen, something tied to the disaster that was about to take place. And after the explosion at Reactor 4, the sightings stopped. No one claimed to see the blackbird again. Now, here's something that is totally verified. Inside the ruins of Chernobyl nuclear power plant, scientists discovered something very unexpected, a black fungus that seems to grow toward radiation. This fungus, called Cladosporium sporosporum, I think I'm pronouncing that right, probably not though. Well, it seems to feed off the radiation. Researchers first noticed it because it was spreading on the walls of the reactor's damaged areas. What makes this fungus so weird is that it contains high levels of melanin. Again, that same pigment that gives human skin color. Melanin in this case seems to help the fungus absorb radiation and possibly convert it into chemical energy to grow. It's like the fungus is photosynthesizing, but instead of using sunlight, it's using radiation. When scientists studied it, they found that the fungus actually grew faster when it was exposed to gamma radiation. Not just resistant, it's thriving in an environment that's lethal to most life on Earth. And that's really cool, because now scientists are thinking this fungus could possibly be used for radiation shielding in the future, maybe on space missions. When the Chernobyl disaster happened in 1986, radioactive fallout spread across Europe, settling into forests, soil, and water. Decades later, wild boars, especially in Germany, are still testing dangerously radioactive. The main problem is that these boars love to dig up and eat underground mushrooms called deer truffles, which are really good at soaking up radioactive particles from the contaminated soil. Even after all this time, radiation levels on the surface have dropped as well, but mushrooms keep pulling all that radioactive material up from the ground, and since boars rely on them as a big part of their diet, the animals end up with high levels of it in their bodies. Some samples tested in Germany have shown levels of radioactivity far above safe limits for human consumption. It's such a big issue that hunters who kill these boars are required to have them tested before the meat can be eaten or sold. In a lot of cases, the meat is just discarded. And these radioactive boars have spread all across Europe, migrating and mixing with other populations.
In our number 10 spot, we have Sasquatch. Alright guys, there have been so many Sasquatch sightings over the years that I'm pretty sure he lives in our universe, but who knows, maybe he jumps between other universes. I could believe it. There was a crazy Sasquatch sighting off of a ski slope where at least 20 people stopped skiing to take a look at the giant hairy creature that looks just like every description of Sasquatch. Giant, about 8 to 10 inches high, hairy, ape-like, living in the woods. Someone got it on film, but it's so far away that you can only make out how big it is, but none of its features. Its features were hidden behind a shadow. The people that saw it firsthand, though, swear that it's a Sasquatch. It is believed that Sasquatch is a human ancestor that never evolved the same way the rest of us did, which, I don't know, could be possible, but I think it came here from another universe, personally. Or perhaps another time. Maybe it walked through time somehow. Or if it came from another universe, maybe it came from a place where only Sasquatches exist. If you like this video, don't forget to smash that like button, as it will really help us out. In our number 9 spot, we have Nessie. Nessie has got to be real. There has gotta be magic left in this world. There has to be. I refuse to believe otherwise. Do you know how many sightings there have been of Nessie? Okay, fine, me either. But there have been many, like too many to count. There's a whole website dedicated to people sharing their sighting stories. My theory is, though, it must live on another plane of existence and come down to ours every so often, or it's from a parallel universe and slips into ours. Or do you think it's possible that we get glimpses into other universes at times? Here is a video, though, taken from the air that shows us a brief moment when perhaps Nessie visited our universe. This video is nuts, because if you want to argue that the creature swimming is not Nessie, then what is it? A long-necked dinosaur that still exists? Perhaps a swimming giraffe? Like, come on. Nessie is real, y'all. This video is totally showing something. In our number 8 spot, we have the werewolf. Another mythological creature that might actually live in another parallel universe is the werewolf. Why? I don't know, because it feels like it should exist. Also, there have been sightings of it every so often, and it's always alone, so it's possible that it exists in our universe, but something makes me think that if it did, then why haven't we seen more than one? It would have had to reproduce somehow. Unless it can reproduce on its own, then perhaps I might believe it. Fun fact, a lot of species can actually reproduce via an immaculate conception. A turkey is one of them. Mind blown, I didn't know. Anyways, here's a very cool / interesting sighting of a werewolf that took place in Brazil in 2015. What's cool about this footage is that many people actually saw this creature and wrote about it online, and so it does give the picture some validity. He has long pointy ears, strange wolf-like legs, and has a small tail. The shot is blurry as it's night out, but you can still see that whatever it is, it's not human. You know what it reminds me of? Stranger Things. And the Demogorgon came from a parallel universe, so perhaps that's what this is. In our number 7 spot, we have the parking lot demon. Hey, demons are creatures too. I had to include this one on this list because this could be a demon or a ghost, but whatever it is, it's definitely not from our universe, or it's on another plane of existence and glitching into ours. So the story goes that years ago in Serbia, a woman was being chased by something in a parking lot. She was so scared that she went to the police to report it. The police reviewed the camera footage from the parking lot and discovered something insane. Yes, the woman was being chased, but whoever was chasing her was a transparent human. That's right, see-through. This was such a shock to the police that the story made it onto their local news. The footage is so wild to see that personally I think it makes you an instant believer after viewing it. Believer in something. Not necessarily demons or ghosts, but a believer that there is something magical out there that we don't know about yet. In our number 6 spot, we have mermaids. A mermaid is a mythological creature that is half human, half fish that is said to live in the sea. Under the sea. For centuries, people have believed in mermaids. Fishermen have recalled tales of seeing a fish that looked human, and of course they say that every story comes from some truth. Whether the story of the Little Mermaid actually came from a real sighting of a mermaid is up for debate. Some believe that mermaids exist but perhaps look different than what we would imagine them to be. There have been videos that fishermen have posted online of fish that could pass as mermaids, such as in this clip. This fish has 4 breasts, a big tummy, arms like a human, but has a shark-like head and mermaid-like fin for legs. So perhaps this could be a mermaid, it just doesn't have the long red hair and look as glamorous as Ariel. Regardless, the sea is a whole other universe that we haven't explored much of, so I bet you mermaids do exist. Number 5. The slender snipe eel. The slender snipe eel, one of the most compact deep-sea critters, can grow to a minimum length of 4 feet, but weighs no more than 6 or 7 ounces. It has a bird-like beak with curving tips covered with tiny hooked teeth, which they use to sweep through the water to catch shrimp and other crustaceans. It has a lifespan of 10 years and has more vertebrae in its backbone than any other animal, which is around 750. However, its anus has moved forward during its evolution, and it's now located on the throat, so that's nice. Their reproduction is done by spawning, which is when a female lays eggs and the males lay their sperm into the water at the same time. Now, the slender snipe eel only spawns once in their lifetime, as they just die after spawning. Now, it's difficult for scientists to research these organisms because of the extreme environment they inhabit, but hopefully one day we'll get more information on that. Number 4. Goblin shark. The goblin shark is a rare species of deep-sea shark. Sometimes called a living fossil, they are part of a lineage of sharks that are some 125 million years old. The pink-skinned animal has a distinctive profile with an elongated flat snout and highly protrusible jaws containing prominent nail-like teeth. It is usually between 10 and 13 feet long when mature, though it can grow considerably larger because there was once one captured in 2000 that is thought to have been measured 20 feet. With 50 teeth in their mouths, those gruesome creatures command attention, and honestly not really for the right reasons. Interestingly, female goblin sharks are larger in adulthood than the male species. Now, despite their size, some researchers believe that these sharks could also dive the depths up to 4,270 feet for short periods of time. Number 3. Ozdax.
Osdax is Latin for bone eater, and these animals are also known as zombie worms. The name alludes to how these worms bore into the bones of whale carcasses to reach enclosed lipids on which they rely for substance. With no mouth, anus, or gut, the 4 centimeter long worms survive by secreting an acid that breaks up the whale bone. Now, why do these even exist? I don't know. They utilize specialized root tissues for bone boring, and it is possible that multiple species of Osdax reside in the same bone. Osdax worms are also known to feed on the collagen itself by making holes in the whale's skeletal structure. These holes can also serve as a form of protection from nearby predators. Scientists from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute using the submarine ROV Tiburn first discovered the species in Monterey Bay, California in February 2002. The worms were found living on the bones of a decaying gray whale in the Monterey Canyon at a depth of 9,491 feet. Number 2. Deep sea dragonfish. Deep sea dragonfish are quite small, usually around 15 centimeters up to 26 centimeters. These fish are apex predators and have enormous jaws filled with fang-like teeth. In addition, they are also able to hinge their upper jaw system, which leads to them opening the jaw to more than 100 degrees, which is scary. This ability allows them to consume extremely large prey, often 50% greater than their standard length. The dragonfish can be found in all oceans, and they also exist at a wide range of depths between the surface and thousands of meters down, between 3,300 and 9,800 feet. It is one of the many species of deep sea fish that can produce their own light through a chemical process known as bioluminescence. They cannot luminesce longer than 30 minutes without adrenaline, but in the presence of adrenaline, it can produce light for many hours. They produce blue-green light, the wavelengths of which can travel the farthest in the ocean. The deep sea dragonfish waves its barbel back and forth and produces flashing lights on and off to attract prey and potential mates. Many of the species they prey upon also produce light themselves, which is why they have evolved to have black stomach walls to keep the light concealed while digesting their meal in order to stay hidden from predators. And coming in at number 1 is immortal jellyfish. The immortal jellyfish is a species of small biological immortal jellyfish found worldwide in tropic waters. Given the nickname immortal jellyfish for its ability to revert back to a polyp stage when it is starving or in danger and basically escaping death, researchers believe this jellyfish may hold the cure to cancer. Under normal conditions, its life cycle is divided into 4 parts. The union of the male and female gametes produces larva or planula. It then attaches to the seabed as a polyp similar to an anemone. The polyp then releases ephora or young jellyfish in the phase prior to sexual maturity. They become jellyfish, reproduce sexually, and start over. But if they are stressed by an environmental threat, the jellyfish revert. After reproducing, they return to the previous phases, becoming polyps on the ocean floor again. As far as scientists know, jellyfish can repeat the process indefinitely. Thus, they are said to be biologically immortal. They can be eaten by a predator or fall into the hands of a swimmer, but they do not die of old age, which is pretty cool, but it's crazy that they can do this.
Deep inside a decommissioned US nuclear weapons plant in the southeast, wild alligators are taking over. A BBC Earth episode reports from the front line, followed biologist Laura Kojima and her team as they captured alligators in the contaminated waterways and sediments. So every year they catch dozens of these gators to test for radiation and toxins. They tag them, scan their skin, tails, and internal organs, looking for leftover radioactive material. So far, most alligators seem clean, but since they're at the top of the food chain, they act like the quote, canaries in the coal mine for the swamp ecosystem. Basically, if radioactive waste starts spreading through the food chain, the gators will be the first to show it. Somehow though, these things have adapted to live in a human-made nuclear wasteland, living in a swamp that most people wouldn't dare enter. The Hanford site in Washington was at one time a secret plutonium factory for nuclear bombs. It's still one of the most radioactive places in the US, but it's also home to deer, turkeys, wild hogs, and rabbits that scientists have been studying. Researchers found rabbits foraging near contaminated soil with high levels of cesium-137, a dangerous radioactive isotope that sticks around for decades. The Department of Energy and wildlife biologists monitor these animals because they can carry radioactive particles outside the site. Rabbits eat plants growing in contaminated areas and then move around the site and sometimes beyond. Other animals can show traces of radiation too, but the rabbits consistently show the highest levels. So they're super valuable when it comes to understanding how far the contamination might spread. On March 1st, 1954, the Japanese tuna boat Lucky Dragon No. 5 was fishing near the Marshall Islands when the US Castle Bravo hydrogen bomb test at Bikini Atoll went off. 15 megatons, way bigger than they'd apparently expected. Crew members saw this massive flash, and then hours later, a white powdery substance started blanketing the ship. Well, they scooped it up with their bare hands. It filled their hair, their noses, their eyes, even got into their underwear. That dust carried fallout, cesium, strontium, and uranium. The crew got sick right away, with nausea, burns, red eyes, bleeding gums. One man, Chief Radioman Aikichi Kobayama, died in September that year from radiation sickness, making him the first person to die from a hydrogen bomb blast. Other crew members suffered severe symptoms and spent weeks in the hospital. They had to dump 2 tons of tuna once the ship returned to port. They were completely contaminated. The fallout had spread over 7,000 square miles of ocean as well. In some areas contaminated by radiation, eastern tree frogs have been found with completely black skin, a condition called melanism. Scientists think this dark color happens because these frogs produce extra melanin, the pigment that gives skin its color, possibly to protect themselves from harmful UV rays or radiation. Studies near nuclear sites show that these frogs living in radioactive zones developed this black skin over time, which is unusual, of course, compared to their normally green or brown cousins. The extra melanin might help absorb or block radiation and UV light, acting like a natural sunscreen. They're still trying to figure out exactly how this dark skin helps them and whether radiation caused genetic changes or triggered the melanin increase in some other way. Either way though, seeing entire populations of frogs turn black near nuclear contamination zones, that's pretty eerie. Hafgufa is a creature that has its roots in Norse mythology, described as a giant sea monster, often said to be the size of a whole island, lurking in the waters of the North Atlantic. Some stories depict it as a whale-like creature, others say it's a type of sea serpent. It's often associated with the Kraken, and some believe they could be the same creature, just with different interpretations. According to the sagas, Hafgufa is so large that its movements could stir up dangerously huge waves, making it a threat to sailors in the region. In fact, it was said that it could swallow entire ships whole with just one gulp. The name Hafgufa is believed to come from Old Norse, meaning sea gulp, which of course fits perfectly with the idea of this creature swallowing anything in its path. Organism 46b is a mysterious creature that became famous after being allegedly discovered in Antarctica, described as a massive, shape-shifting octopus-type being, said to be able to manipulate its surroundings with its tentacles. Some reports even claim that it can hypnotize its prey, paralyzing them with this strange mind-controlling ability. The creature was supposedly discovered by a Russian scientific expedition in 2004. They were investigating the icy waters beneath the Antarctic ice shelf. According to the tale, the team encountered this creature in a submerged lake, with the monster being able to grow to over 30 feet long. The creature is said to have the ability to mimic other creatures, allowing it to blend into its environment or appear as a completely different organism to fool predators or prey. The whole thing got attention after an expedition member supposedly shared the tale online, but there's still no solid proof. It's become something of a Russian government cover-up conspiracy. The Ningen is one of the most bizarre creatures in modern cryptozoology. Allegedly, it lives in the icy waters around Antarctica. Most reported sightings come from Japanese sailors. The Ningen is described as a humanoid sea creature with this pale white body that some say resembles a giant twisted version of a human. That's what makes this thing so creepy. The creature is said to be massive, often reported to be around 20 to 30 meters long or 65 to 98 feet, with a head, arms, and legs, but no real distinct facial features. The first report came about in the early 2000s when Japanese fishermen and crew members of research ships started talking about sightings of this bizarre thing. Some say they've seen it swimming near the ship or breaching the surface like a whale. What makes the Ningen so creepy isn't just its size or its appearance, but the way it seems to avoid any form of human contact, keeping its distance and vanishing as quickly as it appears. The Kraken is one of the most infamous sea monsters in folklore, often depicted as this giant octopus or squid type thing that terrorizes sailors by dragging entire ships under the sea. The legend dates back to the 18th century. Stories of a colossal creature lurking off the coasts of Norway and Greenland. Like with many legendary creatures, there are different descriptions, but it's usually said to be so massive that its tentacles can reach out and capsize ships with a single swipe. Some sailors even reported seeing the Kraken's huge arms rise above the surface like a massive wall, causing a storm of panic before the ship was dragged into the deep. The Kraken seems about as outlandish as it gets, but here's the thing. It may not actually be pure fiction. Some think that what these sailors were describing may have actually been giant squids, which can grow to over 40 feet long. The Leviathan. Pretty much the ultimate sea monster, one that's haunted our collective imagination for centuries, even if we don't know it. It comes from ancient texts, most famously the Bible, where it's depicted as this fearsome sea serpent, which has really become the archetype for all monstrous sea creatures. The description varies depending on who's telling the story, but it's often depicted as this enormous dragon-like beast with scales tough enough to withstand the toughest of weapons. Some tales paint it as a creature of chaos, one that could swallow ships whole or cause storms to wreck entire fleets. The name Leviathan comes from the Hebrew Bible, where it's described as an ancient creature of the deep, sometimes associated with destruction and darkness. Over the centuries, it's been linked to the sea itself, a symbol of the unknown and the powerful forces of nature that sailors feared most.